just strikes me as having just a bunch of team understanding. On the other side of that, equally a great teammate, but one we're getting to know. Caballero is Spanish for, or translates to the Spanish gentleman. I don't think of him as a gentleman. I think of him as a little pot stirrer in every way. Tell me what a little bit of his edge has meant since he's come up to this ball club, Shannon.
Do you have a new favorite player, Brock?
He's got, well, at first it was the beads around the necklace kind of struck me like, okay, all right, here we go. And then he was traded, I think this was on Twitter this morning, I saw somebody, he was in the Mike Leake trade from years ago. He's battled for 4 years in the minors, 146 games, I want to say, in the minor league, something of that nature. And typically those guys don't come up to the league with a lot of swag. And he strikes me as one that has a whole bunch of swag. And honestly, I think it was introduced at a time for this team a couple weeks ago where they really needed that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. He's a little bit older for a rookie. And when we were in spring training, when we were all wondering, well, what are they going to do at shortstop if Dylan Moore is going to be out for a while? And Scott Service just kept throwing Caballero's name out. We're like, yeah, whatever. He's somebody who's in camp. We really didn't know who he was. We knew he came over in the Mike Leake trade, and that was about it. And then he went off and he played in the WBC for Panama. And we're like, okay, if this guy's so important, why are you letting him go play? But, yeah, no worries. We'll have this guy if need be. And so he, of course, is getting all the intel from player development, who apparently liked him quite a bit. But he is a little bit of an older rookie, which I think has something to do with it. He's had some injuries that kind of claimed some season. He was part of that lost season in the minors due to COVID, wasn't able to play at all in 2020. So I think there is a little bit of extra hunger there because he should have been there probably 2 years before. But what comes with that is a maturity. What comes with that is confidence. And he has a lot of confidence, but he is much more, as his name would say, gentlemanly. If you sit him down, have a conversation with him, couldn't be more pleasant. It was a really enjoyable first interview that I did with him. A lot of smile, kind of soft-spoken, and, but he kind of was letting his baseball doing the talking. You saw him, he was making good contact with the baseball, which was a bit of a surprise. Wasn't getting the results earlier, but he had that hard contact. You started to see what the coaches were talking about with him. He's got the confidence of his teammates right now, which is huge, and probably even more so after what he did yesterday. I couldn't believe he turned around and talked to Maldonado. For a rookie to do that, that was something. And it was great to see Taylor Trammell and Julio Rodriguez right there when things started to go. So I'm pretty intrigued and pretty impressed with what we've seen from him early on.
Yeah, I'm 100%. That was awesome, by the way, yesterday. But
what were they talking about?
Well, he's the one. But hey, he's the one who's been in the minor leagues playing with these rules. And as weird as it is, Maldonado being whatever he is, a 10-year veteran or something like that, is at a bit of a disadvantage because he's new to these rules, whereas Caballero's been playing with them most of his minor league career, you would think.
Yeah, but it was a savviness that he wasn't going to put up with it. I mean, there was a little bit of back and forth going on there. That was kind of what we were wondering is, can you use this to your advantage at all? And Caballero was kind of timing up when he was giving his attention to the pitcher and then not having it when the pitcher was trying to go before he was ready.
Right.
That was almost a Kyle Seager, I'm ready type moment right there under the new rules, if you remember what I'm talking about, and that was, completely in the rookie's control, which was impressive.
Who's got more confidence, Caballero or Bryce Miller?
Well, you don't mess with Texas, do you? we might have to go with Bryce Miller. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. It does remind me a little bit of, last year when, and I think obviously part of it's personal, and I think some of it's player development as well. But in spring training last year, when you were trying to figure out, who was going to make the team, was it going to be George Kirby or was it going to be Matt Brash? They both had that kind of confidence. And we talked to them after their outings, and they weren't shook by anything. Well, I made my pitch. Sometimes it's going to get hit, but that was a great pitch right there. If I do know what I need to do, I can get big leaguers out. And more importantly, if I do what I know I can do, I can get big leaguers out. And Bryce Miller's got that confidence as well. To him, it's just, I've got stuff. Don't worry about it.
Who does he remind you of over your years? Not just in recent memory with those two last year, but is there a guy over the last 10, 15, 20 years that you've covered the organization? Just, he is Texan. I mean, that's like the first adjective that comes out the minute you meet him. Is there somebody he reminds you of? Maybe, I don't know, personality-wise, doesn't even have to necessarily be a pitcher.
Are you wanting me to go Mark Lowe on this one? Or are we going back to another favorite?
Was Mark Lowe Texan? Was
He reminds me a little bit of Cliff Lee. Cliff Lee's from Arkansas, but I just some of the demeanor to me, I see a little Cliff Lee.
Yeah, he's definitely. Well, Lee was kind of the wily veteran at the point when he got to Seattle. Bryce is a lot more open and everything. You know, I don't think you'd see Cliff Lee walking in from the bullpen to make his start with his glove on his head.
No,
that's
true.
Probably more Mark Lowe right there. He's pretty unique. He's one of those guys that you talk about, well, they don't even know where they're at right now. He does know where he's at. There's no question about that. He's just not intimidated by it, and he's going to be himself, and why wouldn't you? That's what got him here.
And they knew, right? I mean, we all looked at kind of the AA numbers, some of us novices, and looked at his 5 starts down there in Arkansas, and the numbers in no way overwhelmed you, but obviously the numbers they look at, the spin rates and the velo and everything else that they dug into, they knew. Salk asked me earlier in the hour, I think asking himself in the audience as well, I wonder how long, had there not been a Robbie Ray injury, I wonder how long he would have sat down there before he may have come into this rotation to push Marco, or you know, like how they told him, right, during the spring, you're going to come up, just don't know when. How long had Robbie Ray not gotten injured? Do you think he would have been sitting down there in Arkansas?
Not very long. I talked to Jerry DePoto. I can't remember if it was spring training or if it was right before spring training because of the number of arms they had. A couple of guys in particular, and Bryce Miller, one of them. Because we haven't seen it in a long time, but they used to break pitchers and starters in from the bullpen. You'd start them in the bullpen for a while, and then when the need arose, you would put them into the rotation. And it was a good way to kind of introduce them to the big leagues. And I asked if he was opposed to that. I said, oh, no. He said, yeah. In fact, I think we're going to have to do that this year. And so they weren't going to let him just sit. They were open to having him in. Not that they thought that he would need to be in the bullpen, but they were open to, if that's the only spot that we can fit him into, if all starters are on fire right now, we're going to use that arm out of the pen because we can. But he's a starter. They've had no question. I know Baseball America was kind of questioning that because there have been command issues with the breaking stuff here and there. And we'll see. It's still just 2 starts in. You know, he's not going to be this perfect all the time. But as far as the Mariners organization goes, they've always looked at him as a starter, and I think they would have been comfortable out of spring training if there was an emergency situation having him. You do like them to go down to the minors and at least get some innings and get their feet under them before you bring them up, but I think he's been a full go if needed from the beginning. And you're right, Brock, and I hope that's a lesson to a lot of people that when you look at those ERAs, you've got to really look behind. They're doing different things in the minor leagues. You're not about results. It's not about beating AA players. And pitching is the most measurable aspect of this game. They know exactly what those pitches are doing, and they should do the exact same thing on a minor league field that they do on a major league field that they do on a minor league field. At that point, the question just is, how's a player going to react? So I think they had a real good idea of where he was, and if need be, they would have put him in the pen when there was an opportunity.
Shannon.